created everything. Look what a powerful being you are. You did these things, but now you're in a human body, you forget the power you have.
What you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing.
You're doing it.
Doing what?
Using your imagination.
Welcome to Meta Mysteries, where you don't know what you don't know. My name's Jonathan.
I'm Sean.
And today we are pleased to have you as our guest today, Mr. Ronnie Pontiac. How's your day going today, man?
It's been really good. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So let me tell you a little story about us. We are, about 135, 136 episodes into this spiritual journey of a podcast. And we come into it very open-minded. We want to get to the, kind of like the absolute truth, if there is such a thing, which I think there has to be, right? And we love going into all of the wild things, whether it be witchcraft or magic, Wicca, all the different religions, all the different philosophies, all the different psychic abilities and telekinesis and all that fun stuff. It's just so much fun to learn about. And I know that, everything that you have studied and everything that, you've really been involved in, it kind of dabbles into all of that, right?
Yeah, I've been on that same path.
That is awesome. So if you don't mind, could you tell our listeners, we call them the One, could you tell them a little bit about yourself if they don't know?
I usually tell people just to Google my name, but I guess the reason I'm here is probably, and not dead, is probably because Manly Hall, who was an esoteric philosopher of the 20th century, his life spanned the whole 20th century, was my mentor when he was very old and I was very young. And his kindness and generosity changed my life completely and set me on that path, because the path that you just described is the same path that he was on. Because he loved to collect all the information about everything and just found inspiration and beauty and all kinds of knowledge. Man, so I worked with him for 7 years.
That is so awesome. You worked with him for 7 years. That is,
yeah.
And I just recently saw
assistant for research, right? And so when he was working on stuff, he'd send me to get books, and he'd just all the busy work that goes with research, which was an incredible education. And he also made me his screener later on, which was a whole different kind of education. And then he also made me his substitute lecturer. I was his designated substitute lecturer. There were a couple other guys that he used to have do it too, but I was sort of the one that he wanted to have do it. And that was interesting too, to have to step in where he was expected, right? And he even sent me to do funerals for him when he was too sick to do them.
Wow.
And that was another whole education. I think he did all these things very deliberately and was kind of shaping me and helping me to evolve. And after that, I'm a musician, play guitar and sing, but mostly play guitar in a band called Lucid Nation that started out as a Riot Girl band. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, and then morphed and kept morphing, and we became at times we were a stoner band, and we became later a garage rock band, and then we went full on experimental, and really had a blast and played with some amazing musicians, known and unknown. And we've produced some documentary films about different subjects, like the Gits, a great band from Seattle who unfortunately lost their lead singer, Mia Zapata, to a murder that wasn't solved for years. And they would have been a huge band. They were really incredible. But she, without her, the whole Seattle scene, she was part of the reason that scene chilled the way it did, because no one knew who had committed the murder. So everybody became paranoid. And so we did a film about that and about other kind of difficult subjects, but really, I think, important subjects. And then books now are kind of the main thing. I've written let's see, there's two of them that are out. One called American Metaphysical Religion is this like 600-page book on all the stuff that we're talking about and showing how it goes all the way back to the earliest days of our history, like pre-colonial. And there were people in America all the way through American history who were into this kind of stuff. They were into psychic and witchcraft and Kabbalah. I mean, all the way back then, these traditions were in America.
Yeah, I can't imagine that, one thing that really chaps me a little bit is whenever people start saying, oh, you're into all that new age woo woo. It's like, this stuff goes back farther than you think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this stuff is rooted within, humanity dating back to probably close to the beginning once we were able to talk, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so too. And you really see it if you go into studying Egypt or Sumeria. You can see the sinews of what's going to develop into this animal that we've got of Western esotericism. But it's been there the whole time. And I mean, at the heart of it, like if you're looking at great artists, great writers, moments of revolution where people decide that cultures have to be completely transformed, you find the tradition in there. You find that people are inspired over and over again by the same ideas. And America in particular has been just an unbelievable magnet for all kinds of, basically every kind of religious belief from around the world came here and found a foothold at one time or another, and especially the more underground ones. And people came here to get away from authorities, government and religious, that were telling them that they couldn't practice or believe what they wanted, that they had to do exactly what they were told to do or else. And America was a place where people came to get away from it and wound up inventing religions, hybrids, and people were taking bits of indigenous and bits of African and bits of Rosicrucian and mixing it all together into something new. And it's really exciting. I mean, I think it is. To me, it's one of the most hopeful things about human beings is that we're interested in these things, because the difference between somebody who's going to tell you, look, all those pagan beliefs, all that new age stuff, that's all the devil, that's all wrong. And if you get into that, you're going to ruin the country and you're going to ruin yourself. And we all have to do exactly what I believe because there's only one true way. That was fine, but we can't do that anymore. And why should we, when we have the heritage of the whole world, all the religious traditions of the entire history of humanity pretty much are just a Google search away?
That's what I always say too, is that we are in the age of information and misinformation, of course. And this stuff is literally right at our fingertips. We can no longer go on with just saying, well, this is the right thing and everything else is the devil. It's like, you can't do that because there's too much evidence dating back farther, like even way farther beyond any religion, it seems like. And, I always, I have a bunch of Christian friends. My other podcast, Cult of Conspiracy, my co-host is Jacob. He's a Christian. I have nothing wrong with that. But whenever you say that, the devil placed that there before the Bible was written in order to deceive us, it's like, how far can we really take that story,
Yeah. Yeah. And what purposes is it serving? And also judge it by its fruit. And you can see the division that is sown everywhere. And you can see the paranoia and the fear and all kinds of things that don't really help us during this crucial point in human history to do what we need to do, which is to look past blaming each other and hating each other and being so hateful, and instead find common ground, find the truth, which is that all these different ways of describing all these different paths are all describing the same thing. They're different because they're from different times and places.
Right.
There's different contexts and everything else that kind of applies with that. And like Jonathan always says, we're over here just trying to be that coexist bumper sticker. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like there's some truths here, there's some truths there, there's some good
exactly.
information there. It's like let's just pull from wherever we can and make the best of this thing we call life that
Exactly.
we're stuck here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Until we're
Yeah.
not. So why
Yeah.
not make the best of it?
Yeah, and it's exciting, I think. I mean, when you are exploring all this heritage and you start to find these amazing connections, it's really inspiring. So many times when working on our books, myself and Tamara, who I work with on everything, including she was there with the Manly Hall stuff too. Um, we just love to suddenly see these connections in history, these things revealed, moments of influence between people or ideas, and how it led to something beautiful happening in history instead of something horrible. And over again, we've seen this, and the high quality of people, it seems to me. I mean, one thing that my book taught me was that there were a lot of frauds for sure in American metaphysical religion,
Yeah.
but even the frauds had some truth to tell. And the truth tellers sometimes slipped into fraud here and there like human beings. It made me realize that that expectation that our teachers be perfect. So, for instance, a lot of people ask me about Manly Hall, and some people say, well, look, if he was so brilliant and so enlightened, well, why did he have a weight problem? And how did he get into that situation at the end of his life? And why, above all, was his wife so awful? And first I tell them, well, to begin with, his wife wasn't awful. She was actually a wonderful human being and brilliant, and they loved each other deeply. He got involved with that terrible person at the end of his life consciously, and I don't know why, but maybe that's how he chose to go. And it is true that he took this guy out with him. And and then ultimately, I feel that his weight problem came from the fact that he had very primitive surgery done on his thyroid way back in the day, and so he had a real problem. And I never saw him eat a lot. I saw him eat a little bit of sweets. I mean, he put away a couple burgers maybe, but he was a big dude.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I mean, so for him, that was nothing. And I never saw him like really pig out in any way. He was very restrained about his food intake. But I also tell them, but besides all that, of course he's imperfect. He's a human being. I mean, it's a compliment to him and to how great he is that you want him to be perfect. He's so close, but he's a human being, and we're all like that. We're all in this boat, like you were saying, Sean. I mean, we're all here trying to figure it out. And our greatest wisdom, some of our greatest teachers, like Socrates, Socrates says, "At least I know that I don't know." That's the most important wisdom.
It's brilliant. I
Yes,
love
it
it.
is. Yeah. Yeah, I just love learning about all this stuff. And I've always kind of really looked at Manly P. Hall as like a maybe the Western version of Paramahansa Yogananda. Kind of in the same sense of going around and gaining information and learning from other, ascended
This is
people.
true. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's a rich tradition of it. I mean, you can look at Blavatsky, who was a huge influence on him and who took stuff from all over the place and kind of weaved it into theosophy. But it's funny you mentioned Yogananda because they were a little competitive in Los Angeles in the early days because they were both establishing themselves. And even when I knew him late in his life, he sort of had he'd say like funny little things about Yogananda. And you could feel that there was still a sense of competition going on in some way there, which I found very interesting for two people who were that way. But the funny thing is I've heard the same thing about Yogananda toward him. So I think they must have been like the stars on the scene way back in the day. And I love these early stories about him when he was a kid and he showed passions that later I think kind of embarrassed him. He was very occulty, he'd wear a little cape and he just really loved to look like a magus, and later when I knew him, he was so down home and I mean, just folks. I mean, really a cool guy.
Would you say that I know that we've read a couple of chapters here on from the Secret Teachings for All Ages,
Yeah.
And would you say that was he ever into anything like super dark or super like negative occult or anything like that? Because that's something we get a lot whenever we start referencing Manly P or the book. It's that, oh, that's an evil book, and whenever we read it, we don't necessarily feel that way, and I don't really know where that comes from.
Well, I have a funny story about that, which is that now if you know the book, you know that there's an illustration of it, of a wizard, kind of a magician raising an elemental, and it's usually thought of as being a satanic scene by people who don't know the history. And we used to always laugh in the library at PRS. The librarians were always laughing because people who came in for some reason, who were afraid that this might be occult and bad, would inevitably turn to that picture first and get scared. Instead of looking at Pythagoras or all the other like wonderful, inspiring things in there, they went right to that one and went, oh my God, that's a demon being raised. And it really wasn't what was going on there. And they didn't bother to read what it really was. And they'd usually get scared off, but we just sort of shrugged. And they used to say, maybe we should like put like actual bookmarks in here so that people will turn to the right pages when they first open this copy that's out in the library. But no, I never knew him, and nothing that I know about his history indicates that he was ever into anything very dark. He's very quite the opposite. He did know about it. I mean, he had books and had awareness of the dark side of all these things, and partly because he had to, because as he evolved, it's really interesting about him, you guys, because when he starts out, he's a kid. He's 19 years old when he comes to LA. He told me that the sidewalks were still wooden in many places.
Wow.
Yeah. And he didn't know he was going to be into this. I mean, he had studied the occult already pretty much all his life because his grandma who raised him was way into the Blavatsky and Theosophy and all kinds of stuff that was available then. So
I mean, plus it's fascinating if you really start to read it with an open mind. You're like, oh my God,
yeah,
is this really,
great.
is this real?
Right, the storytelling is amazing in there, and also it's got a lot of truth about life and about the world, and so he started to like hang out on the boardwalk by the beach where there were a lot of palm readers and all sorts of specialists and psychic readings, and he got a friendship going with an older man who would lecture just out there on the boardwalk. And there was nothing there. I mean, there were flowers going all the way up to the ocean, like to the beach in those days. Nothing, it wasn't built up. But there was a pier there that had some carnival-y stuff like there is now. And that's where these fortune tellers were. Well, this old man kind of took him under wing and said, kid, you have a lot of knowledge. You should try to lecture. And he got invited to this place. It was this mansion run by this guy that was way into the occult in terms of like, let's have a night of the Ouija board. Let's invite over a psychic and have our friends over, that kind of thing. And he also encouraged writers and artists like Raymond Chandler. When he first came to LA, lived in this guy's house, and this guy tried to get him a job, but Chandler drank himself out of the job and into being the famous mystery writer. And Manly Hall's first lecture, one of the very first, was given in this guy's house. And apparently from the first lecture, he was brilliant. It was just exactly the way he was at the end. 90 minutes, no mistakes, tons of interesting things with dates, and I mean, just born to do it. And so, of course, he started to attract a following. And eventually he was around this thing called the Church of the People. And they loved him so much and his lecturing so much, they asked him to be their pastor, the minister. And so he was, and he got various from like just, working class people gave him money, but also super rich people gave him money. And they wanted him to go travel around the world and buy books and be Manly Hall. And he did it. And he collected amazing books and artifacts and learned incredible things, and then came back and shared them and eventually produced this book that we all know him by, because there's over 1 million of them in print, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And he did that with a group of people. They would like, he told me they had a house that one of his followers from the church had, and they would all get together like in a living room and lay it out and look at what they were putting next to what. And I mean, it was really cool. His wife at the time, Faye, was his secretary, and she was super involved in helping him organize it. The book was an instant hit, even though it was during the Depression. And he went from being like this, kind of young guy that people thought was really brilliant to being like the man. Like, this is the guy. If you want to know anything about these subjects, this is the guy.
Like he was
Big
born
audiences. For it. Yeah, touring all over the U.S. In 1941 or 42, he played Carnegie Hall and sold it out for a lecture about America's secret destiny. Wow. And he was just suddenly famous. And the weird thing that happened because of that, though, was that he immediately became a magnet for tortured people who had messed up. Maybe they brought pre-existing problems into things like ceremonial magic or into spiritualism. It could be anything, any spiritual path, including the regular religions. We also saw people coming out of Catholicism or other religions who were messed up from that. And they would go to him. He was like the last guy you would go to when you were desperate. They would come to him with ghost hauntings or entities that were disturbing them. And he would counsel people. And that started way back then. And he continued it all his life. That's how I became a screener, because he still had so many people coming to him for help that he needed somebody, and more than one. He got Tamara also to do it, to talk to them, to read the letters, to take the phone calls, and to let him know, yes, you should talk to this one, but no, don't talk to this one. And so he learned a lot about the dark side of magic and the damage that it does. And he was very much about the light, the rational, about beauty, the good, the true, the beautiful. When I knew him, he was deeply into Buddhism and Taoism. And he was somebody who undoubtedly practiced compassion and kind of was in a constant state of meditation. And I think that's how he was able to do those wonderful lectures the way he did. And by the way, one of the things that was crazy about those lectures was, and it happened to me, I mean, I'll tell a little story about how I got there. So where do I come from? I come from a family of war survivors. I was the only kid that they had, and they were much older when they had me. So it was weird. And I was a runt. I was premature and all that. And I got beat up like all the way through until I got into high school. And then I started to morph, and I turned into this musician, and I got very dark. And I became aggressively nihilist. Like when I studied at that time, I looked into Crowley and Anton LaVey. It's the darkest shit I could find. I was looking for, I remember reading Evola, and I thought they were all just ridiculously romantic. Like they weren't what I was looking for. I was looking for humanity is useless. I was looking for something more like Smith, right? You're a virus. You need to be eliminated.
Right.
So I had a band when I was 17 that had a big biker following, and there was a lot of violence around us. And I basically wanted to be like this voice of hatred and nihilism out there. And it had a strong response amongst angry people. And I got lucky because Tamara, who later would become my wife because of Manly Hall, she walked up to me at a club. I'm standing there all in black, smoking a black Russian cigarette and staring at everybody like I wanted to kill him. And she walks up to me, this kid who doesn't belong there at all. And she says, "Please help me. I'm in serious trouble." And she had been cornered basically by 5 guys who thought, wow, this innocent idiot is going to be an easy victim. And so she thought I was the right guy to talk to, even though the club owner told her, "Do not talk to that guy. He's bad news." But in me, this woke something. Like maybe it's chivalry. I don't know. But nobody ever, no girl, innocent, scared girl had ever walked up to me and said, "Please help me." And something in me said, "I'm going to protect you." And I did. And eventually pretty quickly, we wound up living together and going down our path. But even then, we were both super cynical, super, I was like, for instance, we were like, let's be drug dealers and used up all the drugs, that kind of thing. And
Getting
We'll be
high on your
good
own
drug
supply.
dealers, though, like nice ones,
yeah, yeah. So totally aimless, and then this is when the Manly Hall thing came into my life because I happened to find a copy of the Secret Teachings. My parents had given me money to get a haircut, and I did the obvious thing, took it to buy a book I wanted, and because I had the records I wanted, and so I found this book. I didn't know anything about it. It was an older copy, and it was looked like it was ancient to me, and when I got it, I remember reading each chapter, and I felt like somebody had like lifted the top of my skull off. And like I had turned into a big eye,
Hmm.
and each chapter did that to me. I would read it to Tamara, and we would just go, "Wow!" Just total massive change. Like I think the intro says it all. I mean, where he dedicates it to the rational soul of the world, and that's what it kind of clued me into. Wow, it's not what I thought it was. Like there is something going on here.
Hmm.
And then I happened to mention it to someone who was a friend of mine, and she was a woman, older woman who had been a carnival dancer, and she was really into Edgar Cayce, and it scared the shit out of me about California falling into the ocean. And I was actually thinking, oh my God, I got to move to Virginia Beach with her and her family so that I don't get killed in this huge earthquake in California. I was just paranoid. But when she saw the book, she said, "Oh wow, Manly Hall. I used to go to his lectures back in the day." And she said, "Oh, all my girlfriends that were dancing at the carnival, I always used to try to hook him, because he was so cute." And and she said, "He still lectures." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, it's not far from where you live. He lectures every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for $1." He did that. So cool. So when I found out, I didn't go because I was like, oh man, I can't go and meet that guy. Like, I know who I've been, I know what I've done. Like, I'm ashamed. And eventually, Tamara said to me, he's really old, man. Like, don't you want to go hear him? I mean, won't you feel horrible if, like, you don't? And that convinced me. So we went down there and it was amazing. But the point of all that story was to tell you this. He looks right at me during his lecture. I mean, right at me. And he says, people who are paranoid of natural disasters such as earthquakes because of the guilt that they feel about how they've been living their lives.
Wow, that's pretty specific.
I know. And later, I find out that he couldn't see me. I mean, his vision was not good. When he was reading, the books were like here, and I asked him, can you see people in the eye? He said, no. He said, they're kind of just colors to me. But I also spoke to many people who had the same experience over the years, where he would deliver personal messages to him, to them. And what was that? That we used to talk about it at PRS. Like some people said, well, he's an initiate, he's got this consciousness and he's able to deliver the messages. And other people said, he's channeling. It's totally psychic. I mean, look at it. He's a Pisces. He must be channeling. And other people said, well, I think it's because, he's in the Tao. I mean, that's what I kind of think now. He's just so in the Tao, man. I mean, he was so in the moment, so fully spiritually present in life that magical synchronicities happened around him a lot. And I saw it. I saw how there's just little things that you wouldn't notice, but they were amazing, how the right thing showed up at the right time. And according to him, I was one of those things because he was in a situation where he had an alchemical bibliography being published of all his amazing collection of alchemical books and manuscripts and Rosicrucian books and manuscripts. And he had a guy doing it who was wonderful, Bennett, really talented. But the guy had put in it all this information about bodily fluids being used in alchemical recipes. And Manly Hall said, I think that's dangerous. I don't want that in there. This isn't a recipe book. And the guy refused to take it out because he was an academic. And he said, no, this is golden. I mean, we need to put this information in here. Well, so he needed somebody to take over, right? And I go walking in there because after the lecture, Tamara and I came out the very next day and volunteered. And they wanted her because she had office skills and stuff, but I had nothing. But they did ask me the question, do you have any familiarity with foreign languages? And I said, well, yeah. I said, I grew up around a bunch of them. And they were like, well, what? And I was like, well, German and French and some Russian and some Polish. And they said, oh, interesting. So they called the next day and they offered Tamara a job. And being a dick, I said, no way, man. You're not going to go work there. And I'm going to sit here with the cats. Forget it. The next day they called for me. And they said, Manly Hall wants to meet you. And I said, oh, why? Because he has something he'd like to talk to you about. So I had no idea, of course, at the time what was going on, nor did I have any knowledge of alchemy except what I read in his book. And they ushered me into his office, this beautiful big office filled with the most amazing art, like a Japanese altar. And his desk was this amazing carved with dragons, just beautiful. And he's sitting behind it. And there's these 4 women, 2 on either side, these older women with crossed arms who are looking at me like, what are you doing here, you little punk? And he did this. He was a funny guy. He would sometimes do this like W.C. Fields Barrymore kind of accent. And he looked at me and he said, come on in and make yourself miserable. And so I came in and I sat down. And he pushes this galley of paper in front of me, this stack of papers. And he's like, do you know what this is? And I said, he said, this is my alchemical bibliography. And I need somebody to edit it for me. And because you have familiarity with languages, I think that you're the one. And I said, I'm not educated. I know. And he said, no, you're going to be fine. Believe me, just, you know what, take it in the library and look it over, and then you can come back and talk to me a little later. So I took it. As I walked out of the room, the vice president of the society, who was a war veteran and a really, really wonderful woman, Pat Irvin was her name. She went running around the side of the office to the library front door and stopped me and like grabbed it from me. And she said, that was a mistake. I said, thank you. Yes, I believe it was a mistake. I get home, there's a phone call. Manly Hall, your office, first thing in the morning. Okay. So this time I walk in, it's just him. And he says to me very seriously, young man, from now on, whenever I tell you something, if anyone contradicts it, you come to me. You take orders only from me.
The boss.
Pushes it. It was amazing. I mean, I still get goosebumps when I tell the story. And then pushes the thing in front of me again and said, you'll be fine. And he said, in the morning, we'll look at it and we'll decide what you're going to work on. You'll go work on it. And then in the afternoon, we'll see how you did. And then he said, the clincher, you can also have lunch with me in the vault. And you can ask me questions about any of the books or manuscripts in there.
God, that is golden right there. That is so crazy.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, that's like, if we live 100 lifetimes, that kind of experience is one of a kind. And his generosity, I mean, and it turned out he was right, that I was a skillful scholar. And I was able to very quickly rise to the occasion. That's how I became his research assistant, because he depended on me because I was really good. And he was amazing to work with, by the way, because here was a man that was in his middle 80s, and he would call me in the office and he would say, he always called me the boy. He'd say, get the boy. And then I would come in and he would say, there's a book I need for the article I'm working on. It's on the second shelf, on the second story, on the far right, with a red cover. I mean, he knew where like every book in that library was and could direct me to them. And we did have amazing lunches in there where he showed me like a real Ripley scroll, this incredible alchemical scroll that just, what a work of art and of mysticism and of science, really, of early science. And he just gave me life, you know?
That is amazing. That is
I'd like to touch on something real quick. I'm sorry, Jonathan. The simple fact that in the beginning you were like, no, I'm not good enough to be able to take this on. You know, your ego was like, there ain't no way, you got the wrong guy type of thing. And he was like, no. Like, you're the guy. It's like that just goes to show like a simple example of how other people can see the true light within you, and you that you don't see in yourself. So that's just great. I'm really glad that you didn't take no for an answer. From Mr. Smith that was trying to tell you otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. And his the other thing is that his faith in the synchronicities that came around him. Like later, I met a guy who worked with him much earlier than I did. His name was Art Johnson. This guy was a character, man. He the first time I saw him, he's the guy who would set up the audio for all the lectures. All the lectures that you hear, like after the maybe 1970 or something like that, of Manly Hall are recorded by him. And he had a limp. He had to wear a leg brace. He's this really cool looking guy with kind of longish hair, and he would always wear shirts with like "Leave me alone" like written on it or stuff like that. He was a funny dude. You see him out back smoking a cigarette. I later found out that he was one of the greatest guitar players who ever lived. Like Miles Davis admired his guitar playing. He was somebody who played with people like Lena Horne, and he played with Paul Horn and Willie Bobo. I mean, all these amazing artists. And he could play almost any instrument. He played amazing Renaissance lute. Like he would transcribe Ficino, things that Ficino played during the Florentine Renaissance and then play them at PRS for Christmas celebrations. And he was also somebody who, according to his story, walked into Manly Hall's office after same kind of experience, came in to volunteer, and somebody said, well, Manly Hall wants to meet you, walked into the office, and the first thing that Manly Hall said to him was, there you are, I've been waiting for you.
That's awesome, dude. Oh my God, these stories are just like timeless and so great. It's like a little window into the past and just really understanding the man. I mean, I know a lot of people probably like to villainize him. Usually, the people who are all fire and brimstone and all that kind of stuff. But I never.
Not just them. Well, there's a lot of people who think that he's a reptilian, Illuminati, elitist, and all that stuff. So that's part of the reason that actually I started to come out with my books and writing, and I just felt like, well, really what started it was Tamara wrote a book about our experiences there that was published by Inner Traditions, and she wrote the book partially because of that. One reason was because at that time Art Johnson was dying, and he told us, you two had an incredible, unique relationship with that man, and you need to write it down. And to Tamara especially, he said, your relationship with him was completely unique because you weren't some occultist guy. You became his pal. Like you were really his friend, and knew him in a completely different way. And you got to write about this person that you knew, his kindness and his humor, especially, because one of the things he loved about Tamara was he could crack her up. Like Marie Hall, his wife, was notorious at PRS as Mad Marie, and is still considered by most to be like, well, she's not quite as bad as Socrates' wife, but and she was really a tough nut to crack, but he loved her and she loved him, and her passion was very much in metaphysics and was driven by these diabetes sugar spikes that she didn't know she was having. But often after dinner, she would like go off on these, she'd stand there and like give a lecture, and like talk about her beliefs and what in history and what America's destiny was going to be, and really get passionate about it. And he would seem to be asleep sometimes. But if she said something like, what was the date on that, Manly? He'd be right there with it. But the funny thing was that poor Tamara is sitting there getting a headache from these run-on Germanic sentences that Marie is trying to explain her metaphysics with. Manly Hall is turning around and like suddenly makes a face at her, or he just does these weird side comments or things, and she starts laughing. And of course, he never gets caught. So Marie is looking at Tamara saying, what's the problem? Why are you laughing? Which makes Tamara laugh harder. He thought that was hilarious. So he was that kind of a person. I mean, he was so fun to be around. When I got since we were allowed the run of their house, they treated us like grandchildren. I I saw his bedroom. He had an office right off there. And sometimes he met with me there when he wasn't well enough to go into work. And so I got to see what books did he have by his bed, right? Because I was always interested in things like that. Like, what are you reading when you're going to sleep? And he had stamp albums and he had joke books.
Of all things.
That's what he had by his bed.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it makes sense to go a little bit more lighthearted or, just because he's looking into all of this occult and all of this spiritual stuff all day. I mean, what are you going to do for
And
fun?
hearing people's problems and, so now let's have a few laughs before we go to sleep. I thought that was so cool. He really was I consider the word wholesome to fit with him. And other people may have had different experiences with him. I was only there those 7 years. And I do believe I got there when he was much mellowed. The place was being run by women at that point because the men had all died off and the widows were running it. And it was a super friendly, homey kind of an environment that was so welcoming. I mean, I never would have been allowed through that door, 10, 20 years earlier when he was way more important. And there were politicians showing up and men who were running everything and they were busy and trying to kind of make things happen. And when I was there, it was perfect. It was like this autumn kind of just harvest time of mellowness where everybody was so sweet. And I mean, people gave us incredible books. I mean, like rare collectible books were just handed to me by these women because they respected my intellect and they wanted me to have every possible advantage. It was like a mini version of what he had experienced. And their generosity still blows me away. I mean, I remember one of them, his secretary, took me to a warehouse because she used to run a bookstore. And she let Tamara and I go through the whole warehouse looking for books and then sold them to us for pennies on the dollar.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing that happened. And he would do things like that too. Like he would find he had so many art treasures that were gifted to the society in wills or that he himself had collected when he was young and he was traveling with money behind him from the DuPonts. And he would find some little treasure that for him was like, oh, this little thing, we have so much stuff, put it out in the gift shop and sell it cheap. So people would stumble on these amazing treasures from Asia. I actually have a couple of them, or from Europe that he put out there for just, just so they could have it, really. That a regular person. Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, just somebody who just liked it, and a working person who can afford it. You couldn't afford it otherwise, could have it. It's just, yeah, amazing guy. I mean, at that time, amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, to have stumbled across the wealth of knowledge that he had looked into and studied and everything. I mean, I'm sure he knew that, giving things away and not expecting really much in return, it's going to come back to you one way or another. I mean, you study that stuff so deep. That's one of the inner core knowledges of almost all forms of religion and spirituality is that, like, give freely, don't expect anything in return, and the universe will reward you. And
Exactly.
and I just love that kind of mentality. I try and do that as much as I possibly can. You know what? We actually, our favorite chapter in that book, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it's based on Thoth the Atlantean. And talking about Atlantis and that whole story. So we've talked a good bit about Thoth and Atlantis and the Emerald Tablets and stuff like that. And something that we always get caught up on is that, all right, so there's the Emerald Tablet, but then there was the Maurice Doreal version of the Thoth, what was it called? Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. And some people will say that Maurice Doreal, he was kind of full of shit because it was kind of some kind of channeled information or something like that. Right. And I don't know. What do we know? I mean, I believe that some people can channel. I mean, who's to say that guy couldn't? But even still, it seems as though the Secret Teachings for All Ages had a lot of that same kind of rhetoric in that chapter, as Maurice Doriel did. So would you say that he really took a liking to that book, or did he stumble across, information even before, that kind of stuff was available?
I think he was pulling a lot of, in the early days when he was writing The Secret Teachings, he was really into theosophy and the theosophical viewpoint of initiates and secret orders and hierarchies of gods and such. And I asked him once if he had anything to do differently, what would he have done differently? And he said that he wouldn't have glamorized that stuff so much when he was young, that he felt like he had gotten a little too into it and that he wasn't giving people what they really needed, that it could be hurtful to people because what they give away their own agency, right? So you want to be an initiate, you want to achieve, you want to be this, and you forget that well, go ahead. Like, what's stopping? You're waiting for the guy to show up. You're the guy that has to show up, right? I talk a lot about in my book about John Winthrop the Younger, who's a great example of an American who is totally misunderstood by history as it's taught in our schools. And I'll tell you something briefly about him. So his father was the first governor of Boston's Massachusetts Bay Colony. He, at the age of like 18, is already into the occult. He found some Rosicrucian books and he's into John Dee's library and he acquires a bunch of John Dee's alchemical equipment and library. He goes to Europe to try to meet Rosicrucians, but he's very disappointed by the people he meets. He decides, well, if I can't meet Rosicrucians who initiate me, then I'm going to try to live like a Rosicrucian, because the Rosicrucians say what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to heal people without charging them. You're supposed to help the innocent, defend the innocent. You're supposed to help bring knowledge to people. You're supposed to help forward science, and on and on. So his father finally says, maybe he's like 19, 20 now, come on down to the United States, what's going to be America, but at that time was only Massachusetts Bay Colony. When he shows up, he's got crates full of John Dee's books and alchemical gear that he's bringing to America. His crates are marked with John Dee's famous alchemical occult symbol, the Monas Hieroglyphica, which is like having pentagrams all over your luggage and your dad is a pastor.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's weird. But nobody thinks twice about it, which tells you something about the Pilgrims, that they weren't exactly the way we're told they were, because his father says to him, sure, set up the alchemical shop in my home. So the first governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony had an alchemical laboratory in his house. And the son was running.
Whoa.
But nevertheless, his son finds out, wow, Boston is uptight, right? And I don't like it here. What am I going to do? I'm going to go start my own colony. He basically, I think, imitated the invention of Rhode Island, right? And by Roger Williams. And he said, I'm going out into the territory, which turned out to be Connecticut. He became the first governor of Connecticut Territory. In Connecticut, he became famous for making gold, but more importantly, for making medicine, alchemical medicines that made him such a famous doctor that sick people who could stand the voyage traveled all the way across the Atlantic to get to him. He tried to create a college of light. He wanted to bring all the most intelligent people from Europe to America and put them all in one town and have them all working together to break science and everything else through to a new level. Unfortunately, that was around the time that there was a huge indigenous reaction to all the destruction that the colonists were bringing, and it scared everybody, so they stayed in Europe. He also protected people. He protected a tribe, the Pequots, who had been decimated by disease. And then Uncas of the Mohegan tribe, who some people might know from the Fenimore Cooper story, The Last of the Mohicans. Yeah. He was not a hero. He was actually a bully and a sadist. And under him, the Mohegans became really pretty nasty, and they tried to enslave the Pequots. And at great personal risk, John Winthrop the Younger protected the Pequots and had to maneuver around Boston and the Mohegans that were very powerful in order to protect them. And he also protected women who were accused of being witches and helped in the defense of them and helped to get them out of the territory where they were being killed. And so he really was living the life of a Rosicrucian as the governor of the Connecticut territory.
And in that time is so crazy too. I mean, and it wasn't long after that, well, I guess it would be around the same time that, well, I don't know. I'm very bad at dates and stuff like that, but King James writing the demonology book and getting into what he sees as witches and everything.
The same arena.
Crazy. And this guy was out there protecting these poor women who were like, oh, well, I guess what they think, they're witches. It's like, what?
No, he protected them, and he protected his soldiers, rather quite the opposite. He protected the people living in his territory from becoming soldiers for the crown. Because part of the thing about being a territorial governor was whenever the King of England said, I need soldiers, you had to send over people. And Winthrop Jr. was famous for first he would ignore the first order, right? Like, oh, I never got that. And then he would say, oh, but I need these guys because, we're building a new iron foundry and you guys need iron for your armies, don't you? So I need them over here. And then, oh, did I get another notice? I didn't get that one. and they never would go, right? So it was amazing what he was doing. I mean, such an amazing human being that I wish more Americans knew about. And here's the weirdest thing of all. That Cotton Mather, and apparently that's how it's pronounced according to an ancestor of his I met, rather a descendant of his that I met. Cotton Mather was friends with John Winthrop the Younger. And when John Winthrop the Younger died, he eulogized him as the Christian Hermes, Hermes Christianus.
Whoa.
Now, Hermes is pagan. Whether you're taking the Egyptian Hermes or the Greek Hermes, it's pagan. So here is this like total pilgrim, judge, religious authority from our history, Cotton Mather, calling his friend, oh, this guy, he was a Christian Hermes. That is not what we've been taught about the pilgrims or about the occult. Mm-hmm. The pilgrims that all these people who are trying to say that the occult should be outlawed and such are appealing to were more tolerant.
Unreal, dude. And that's why I always have the biggest problem with history in general, because it's, the old adage, it's that history is told by the victors. And, it's amazing how, the people who are writing our history books, like, we're always the good guys. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, how we can just always be the saints and the angels of the world. Right. It's unreal. But no,
they had me going there for a while though. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
For a good minute, I was like, oh, we're the good guys.
We are the
well, you want to be right?
Born here, yeah,
we all want to be. I mean, that's the thing one of the things that really bothers me about what's going on in the country today is I know everybody I know is polarized. Like everybody's like, I hate them, and well, I hate them, and I look at them both and I go, you both really want the country to be great. You really do. You both really care about the future of America. You both care about America. You have super different ways of thinking it's going to be better. But can't we begin with, we all really want a better America instead of saying, no, they don't. They want to ruin it. No, they don't. They have a different way of making it a great America.
Exactly.
And there's so much common ground that could be found. One of the things I used to love about working with Tamara in music and in Riot Girl particularly was, I guess partly because of her upbringing, because her dad and her oldest brother were Marines. And I mean, this is an American, she used to always say, like when Obama was president, she'd say, she'd go, my relatives are out there and someday you all going to be hearing from them. they're going to come knocking on the door of power because they've been treated very badly. And sure enough, they did. And one of the wondrous things to me about her was she would come out with this ultra feminist, hilarious stuff that she was doing, punk rock. and she would offend, these people. And sometimes they would go after her. They would send her pictures of themselves standing with Confederate flags and all this. And her responses to them were always so funny and so like in the wheelhouse of their own world that they wound up liking her and liking the band. And I saw her turn around hecklers at our shows, right, with what she said back to them. So cool.
That's
But
amazing.
part of the way she did that was that she was looking at them and going, "Oh man, you and me have a lot in common. You think we don't, but," and then she like named things and they would realize, well, yeah, you could be my little sister.
Exactly. And that's something that I have been trying to get across the point that we are so much more alike than we are different. Anybody, it doesn't matter. If you're human, you have so much more alike with even the most opposite person you can imagine than you do your differences. And, anything political, it just seems so on purpose to divide. And it just seems every single election year, people fall for it again and again and again. And I'm not going to lie. I used to fall for it. I used to fall for it very hard. I think that it's so easy to just get sucked into that madness. But after a while, you start really searching inside of yourself or meditating or learning about different spiritual philosophies or anything like that. You start to really go, oh, wow, like it almost seems as if none of it's real. You know what I mean? Like it's just all a show. And
it's let me tell you a story that I think illustrates it. For me, this was a real eye opener. So of course, being in the musical world that I was in, sort of somewhere between punk and grunge, everything was activism in our world. Everybody was writing zines. All our shows, almost all of our shows were fundraisers for one thing or another. And we used to play shows and get paid and give the money to our fans who were like selling their blood. They were so poor. And we had this attitude, we're rock for choice. We're food, not bombs. We're, save the animals. Like we're the good guys. And later on, as we got into making documentaries, we stumbled into a documentary that we produced about this horrible aspect of Obama's immigration policy. And Tamara helped to elect him. I mean, she worked with Danny Goldberg, who managed Nirvana and Led Zeppelin, to bring like Bruce Springsteen with an acoustic guitar to some county that they needed and things like that, because we felt it was so important to stop the GOP from getting yet another term. And we thought it made a big difference, and maybe it does, but not in the way we thought.
Right.
And so we find out, well, okay, so basically what Obama's doing is he's taking these kids whose parents neglected to register them when they came here, who have spent their entire lives here, who some of them don't even speak Spanish or speak it badly, and they play baseball. They're us,
Americanized all the way.
yeah, totally Americanized, and they threw them out because they did not have the proper documentation. Well, Mexico didn't want them because they didn't have relatives who would take them in, and these people wound up living in the sewers of Zona Norte, right next to the cartel-controlled area. And I knew this filmmaker, Charles Shaw, and this incredible photographer who was living down there and documenting what was going on. I met through Charles, and Charles was crazy enough to go down there and film. And this film that came out of it really documented these tragedies that were going on. It was just horrible to see some poor guy like crying because he misses his children, he misses his, friends, and he's living in a sewer. And we thought, wow, what a film, right? So we had a few small connections that we had made in film, and I let people know about it. And to my shock, one morning I had a letter from Edward James Olmos. And he said, I saw the teaser and I want to see this film. So we got him a copy, and he said, I'm going to be your narrator, and I'm going to be your executive producer, and I'm going to go straight out and get you money, and we're going to get this film seen. I've been waiting for this film. You know what happened?
What's that? Nothing.
You know why? They stiffed him, man. The whole liberal freaking, I thought, open-minded, all the Obama supporters were like, we're not going to criticize him. We need him. And they shut down Edward James Olmos. We got nothing. That made me go, okay, wait a minute. We got a big problem here. It's not a good guy and a bad guy.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing that with politicians and people who are running for president, everybody wants to look at these political candidates and presidential candidates as if they're going to save us. They're going to get us out of all of everything that we don't want, because they stand for everything that we do want. And then you start really noticing that, well, a lot of the followers, they somehow have merged their beliefs with the political person that is running. And so now they're starting to say everything that, Trump was saying, or Biden was saying, or this person was saying, that person was saying. And now you don't have an original thought. It's because you like this guy so much that, and you put so much value and you believe that he's going to save us, that you don't have an original thought anymore, and he's taken you. And that's so unfortunate, because it's almost like from Men in Black, what was it, like a group of people are, they're stupid or whatever, but the singular person, that's who you can talk to. But groups of people, man, we don't do well in groups as far as groupthink. It's just so
well, Jung
chaotic.
said that, Jung said that the bigger the crowd, the lower the IQ. But let me tell you a story from history, esoteric history. That's the same thing, to show you this is the human predicament, man. So I have a book coming out next year that's about Rosicrucian origins and context. It's about what happened in Europe that caused these Rosicrucian manifestos to come out and create this crazy thing that turned into the 30 Years' War. And there's been a lot of new research. And back in Manly Hall's day, for example, people thought, well, these were written by Rosicrucian initiates. These were high-level people who anonymously put out these manifestos because it was time to change human society. But these days, we have all this incredible research that's been done by academia, as academia is now finally paying attention to all this history that was neglected forever. And we're seeing that it may have actually been something very different. And my argument is, with some of these academics, is that really what happened there was more similar to something like the creation of Howl by Ginsberg. We had students and teachers who were radical for the period. They were reading Giordano Bruno, who the Catholic Church had burned at the stake. They believed in science. They believed in what they called a universal reformation, which would reform government, it would reform business, it would reform medicine. Everything would be better because of it. And the books that were written, the manifestos, the three of them, are kind of humorous. I mean, there's funny stuff in it. There's even some sexual content in places, and stuff that would not have been natural if it was this high initiatory scripture that people try to make it out to be. And maybe it is that as well. But it also had this side to it that was this wonderful kind of creation. Some writers have called it the first science fiction, right? Because it's the story of this amazing master, and he lives for hundreds of years, and he knows all the secrets. And then this brotherhood of Rosicrucians who are invisible, and they have an invisible college that's everywhere but nowhere. And it was kind of science fiction. And the idea, I believe, of these books was to awaken this desire for universal reformation. We see them do what they were meant to do in the life of John Winthrop the Younger, right? He reads the books and he goes, right, I want to be that, so I'm going to be it. That's what they wanted. They wanted every single person who read those books to go back in their lives and be a little Rosicrucian and start a universal reformation in that little corner of the universe that they live in. But what happened was very, very different. What happened was the supporters, the people who believed in what they were saying, they all started writing books and pamphlets saying, I should be a Rosicrucian, and here's why, and you should include me in your brotherhood. And then the people who hated it were calling them the devil's Jesuits, and were saying that it was all this satanic plan to undermine the Catholic Church. And hardly anybody took it the way it was meant. which was, why don't we all go home and live better lives, like awaken to living a worthwhile life, be like one of the great traditions of all the religions, right? This metaphor, try to be a sun in your and other people's lives. So, bring light, bring warmth, let people smile when they see you walk in the room because they know that something good is going to happen. That's how I felt about Manly Hall. I mean, he was a sun in my world, right? He was somebody who brought so much light, so much warmth, so much generosity, and whose seasons ruled my world for a little time, right? And so I saw how he shed so much goodness into the world and inspired me to try to, in my own ways, to bring support where I could to people and wanting to be that. And it was quite a path because I have a lot of shadows I'm even still dealing with. And
who doesn't?
So exactly. But what a great path, what a wonderful experience to be on that path. And I think that's the key to most of these spiritual. And I know a bunch of them. We could talk about all kinds of things. The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is a beautiful meditation practice. And but on the other hand, we could be looking at ancient Egyptian religion or at Neoplatonic theurgy, and they're all teaching this kind of getting out of the particular you to reacquaint yourself with the universal you, and then getting back in the particular you to help to make everything in this school or whatever, prison, wherever we are, work better and be a better place to live. And go save some people, go save some cats, go save some dogs, like show mercy to the living and make yourself somebody that when people in your town see you coming, it makes their hearts glad.
I love that. And deep down, I think there is that. I really like what you said there. That universal you. Like we experience that. I believe when we meditate. When we meditate, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm something better than the idea I have of myself. And so when I'm in a deep meditation, I don't know. There's something to that. There's a feeling I get that I'm just like, oh, I am a lot better than I think. And there is this universal want to help people, to make things better. I mean, imagine if everybody did that. Yeah, sure, you might not be 100% every day, but then the guy next to you is. You know what I'm saying? And so if we all just did that, if we were all everybody's light when they didn't have enough light that day, that's all there is to it. We make it so hard.
Just batteries for each other, dude.
That's it.
Yeah.
So easy. Yeah, damn it.
Yeah,
Really
it's love. I mean, that's the word. And that's, we mentioned Ficino earlier. The other book that I didn't mention that I worked on that I co-authored with Tamara is called The Magic of the Orphic Hymns. And this is our kind of translation and the history of this amazing tradition that has influenced the West over and over and over again. A really amazing influence from this Orphic tradition. Always seems to spark a renaissance. And if that's true, the huge amount of interest going on right now comparatively in Orphism bodes well for the next decade or two. But these studies led us to seeing this statement that Ficino made. He was kind of the father of the Renaissance. He translated the Orphic hymns and would play them for Lorenzo the Magnificent, for Leonardo da Vinci, for Michelangelo. I mean, all these people were together listening to the Orphic hymns and reading Plato, thanks to his translation, and talking about how do we live a great life? How do we have a better society? How do we make better art? And getting really inspired. And Ficino said that the Orphic hymns taught him that the essence of magic is love.
I could not agree more with that. Yes, because, we've, like we said, we've read obviously a bit of the Secret Teachings, but we've also read this book called The Magician by Philip Cooper. And it's really a lot like that. And it's not just love for everybody else, but love for yourself is so incredibly important, because if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't treat yourself like you should be, then yeah, of course none of your magic's going to come true. Like you gotta be the one that's going to diffuse, like infuse rather, all of that emotion into whatever kind of practice you're going to do, or else it's not going to work. It's like, you know, they say that whenever like you're praying or whatever, you got to imagine it already happening in this moment. And it's hard to imagine, you know, any kind of blessing or good thing happening to you if you don't love yourself. So it absolutely is like, it's a huge deal for sure. I love that you said that.
Well, let me share with you guys a brief version of The Secret of the Golden Flower, because this is such a wonderful meditation technique. And a lot of the metaphors here and experiences here, I think you will recognize. And we're kind of talking around the corners of it anyway. So,
Oh no, yeah,
I'd love to
I
share
was
it.
hoping you would.
Oh,
To be
okay.
honest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is an ancient Chinese Taoist alchemical text. It may go back as far as the 1200s. It wasn't written down, though, until the 1600s and then again in the 1800s, more certainly. And the basic idea of this is that we have what could be called metaphorically a lower soul and a higher soul. It's one soul. But when we enter into the body, when we were here in the world of incarnation, the lower soul is so involved in the intricacies of keeping this universe of our bodies going, keeping all the organs and cells and every molecule and atom functioning in harmony so that our bodies can sustain through time. And also through that body, learning to navigate society, language and writing and driving and your job and your relationships. And the lower soul often becomes lost there and forgets completely about the part of itself that's still there outside it. In the Rig Veda, the Hindu scripture, they call this, they have this great little phrase, two birds on a branch. One eats, the other watches. Right? So the part of the soul that eats can forget itself. The part of the soul that watches never forgets itself. So what is it like when you forget? Well, when the lower soul is identified with the body and with the life, this is what it looks like. Wow, this is scary. I could get run over any minute by anything. This is an uncaring world where horrible things happen every minute, and I've got to take care of myself. I've got to take care of my own. I can't worry about what else is going on. This is a dangerous situation. And besides that, God, I hate everybody. I hate my own family. I hate my kids. I hate my job. I hate everything. It's just, this is such a burden. The only thing that I like to do, I like to watch shit die. I like murder movies. I like murder TV shows. I like killing games. I like anything. I like hunting. I like anything where I can go out there and I can kill shit or see shit die. I like that. Why? Well, the lower soul subliminally understands that that's freedom. The death is when you get out of this claustrophobic predicament.
Wow.
And so now here you are in this world, hating it, missing out all the incredible, the synchronicities, the manly halls, the adventures, living in fear of the world, as so many religions teach us. It's all a snare. Don't enjoy life. Don't have pleasures. Don't try anything different. You'll be in trouble. This is all danger. And in that space, we are destructive. We're destructive to ourselves. We're destructive to other people. And we love judging other people from that space. We love criticizing ourselves and others. We're failures. They're failures. They're stupid. It's this kind of reaction where you look at something, you just dismiss it over something. Like there are people who think somehow that if they tell me that I look like I somehow resemble Howard Stern, that's going to hurt my feelings or something. I really don't care. But they will notice that instead of listening to what I'm talking about. Right.
Yeah. Just very surface level shit at that point.
Exactly. And so now, how do we get out of it? Well, we've got to awaken our higher soul, the golden flower. And it's a very simple meditation technique. It's called the 100 Days. And you start out by doing these meditations where it's so simple. It's called put your mind on your breath and put your breath on your mind. So now you're just watching yourself breathe. And what you do with your breathing is you slow it down, you keep it deep, and you make it very soft so that you try not to even feel it as it is in your nostrils. You don't worry about thoughts that float by, you just don't attach to them. Just let them go. And you are to do this for 100 days. And when this happens, there are often experiences of luminosity, light, and the sort of these inner lights, or light that isn't actually in the room in a physical sense, but you have these light or warmth experiences.
And how long are these meditations?
It's really it's not so important how long you do it, just the consistency and the fact that when you do it, that you're there in this peaceful state, wanting to awaken the golden flower. And just the intent that is really the most important part. And the 100 days isn't the end of the practice, it's the beginning. After that, you're pretty much just trying to do it all the time whenever you think of it.
Yep.
And when you think of it, it doesn't have to be all the time, but the frequency of it eventually builds and builds. And you sometimes get glimpses of the golden flower, and it's this ecstatic, amazing thing, which I'll describe in a moment. And then you also sometimes fall away from it. You come back down to what you've earned, and then you climb back up. But you do climb. And one of the amazing things about it is that now this is quite a story. So they say that when you really achieve it, like you do achieve various powers, like you do in yoga, that you may become more telepathic, or you may become more creative, or you may have clairaudience and these kind of things. But don't pay any attention to that any more than you do to the thoughts, right? Because that's not the goal. The goal is to awaken the golden flower. And when you awaken it, what you're supposed to be able to do, amazing, is you're supposed to be able to have a consciousness that is at will. You can kind of move out of your body and be anywhere. In other words, you are everywhere when you are that higher consciousness. You can be anywhere you want. You can do anything you want. You can be on another planet and see what that's like. You can do whatever you wish, because the soul is part of the infinity of the universe.
I love that.
And so when you achieve that, you have this skill of being able to, I'm in here in the particular, but now I'm back in the universal. And in my particular case, I had a terrible time with that last part of it. I got a lot of great things out of the meditations, and it changed my life. But I could not get to that out of my body kind of, okay, now I'm out here. And this is such a strange little story, but I think maybe you'll appreciate it. So
I love it already.
So back in the day, Tamara and I had this black feral cat named Jet, and he was a great cat. So great that we never fixed him, because he was just amazing. And we said, someday we'll get you, when we're not touring and all that, we'll get you a wife and you can have some kids, because we want more of you. And so when time came to do that, we got ourselves an F5 Bengal cat, which are like these crazy sort of wild cats. And they were amazing together, and they made 3 great kittens that we had all their lives, and really it was the best family we ever had. It was just great. And one of them was this cat named Flower, and we just named her Flower because it looked like she had a flower on her head, and we were trying to tell the difference between the 3 who looked so similar when they were kittens. We just never changed the name. She became Flower, and she actually could say her name. Someday I'll put up the videos of her repeating her name. It's pretty great. But this cat, she was like my first cat, because all cats loved Tamara, and our cats were all Tamara's cats, and I was sort of just the bystander. Like, if Tamara wasn't there, okay, I'll come bother you.
I'm just
But this
tolerating
cat,
you, kind of.
But this cat was like, you're my human. I'm your cat. And she also loved our music. She would come to every rehearsal. It didn't matter if it was loud. She would lay there in there with us, and just She was so cool, man. She would lay in, I'd be sitting on the ground, cross-legged writing songs with Tamara, and she'd come and lay on her back, like right in my lap while I was playing guitar. Just wonderful. So, November of last year, Flower left us after a very long life, and even kicking coyote ass at the age of 17. And I had a dream where she showed up. And I'm not surprised because I was constantly reading The Secret of the Golden Flower out loud in the house to Tamara and stuff. And in this dream, she taught me how to do it. And in the dream, I experienced leaving my body and being out there with the universe and coming back in and getting back out and coming back in. She had shown me how to do it. And when I woke up, I can't do it in the way I did in the dream in the waking state, but now I get it. I've experienced it, and I have a vision of it. And it is this incredible thing, this incredible experience to still be you. You know, that's really what it's about. To I don't need all this to be me. I'm still me.
Yep.
And so now to continue with the story of the golden flower. So what is it like when you awaken this? Well, first of all, no longer do you feel that the world is going to run you over because, how fragile you are and how strong and omnipotent and forever the world is. Now you feel, oh, wow, the world, it's so frail. It's so fragile. It's always changing. And I love it. I love everything about it. I even love the bad things because it's so beautiful. It's so amazing. I mean, what's even going on here? We're not even sure.
Just
like, talk about drama,
crazy
art,
ass movie.
Yeah, it's just the ultimate, right? We're all creating it together, and then you can have, you can fall in love with a cat who teaches you the secret of the golden flower. There's no limits in this crazy world, and that's. This falling in love with life is what I saw in Manly Hall. Like, to me, and he did write about the secret of the golden flower. He described it as every soul has a little trap door that allows you to escape into the universe when you want to.
Ah, that's awesome.
I love that.
That is wild, man. I tell you what, I had always tried to have those kind of out of body experiences. I mean, whether it be by hypnosis or past life regression or meditation or, taking some mushrooms or DMT or any of these things. I'm trying to do my best to just see what it's like to be outside of my body. And I know that, like, we dream and everything, and it feels, I guess you could call that somewhat of an out of body experience. It's not necessarily in your physical body, but even still, you're attached to a body most of the time. And so I really wanted to see that freeing feeling. And one night I'm sleeping, and I told this story already, but I'll tell it to you. Sure. One night I'm sleeping, and for some reason I wake up. I think I wake up, and I wake up and I realize that, oh wow, like I feel like I could. Let me see if I can jump out of this body, because I'm right in that, half sleep, half awake stage, in the theta state of mind, that if there was ever a time to do it, it's right now. Like, I just, some reason knew that. And so I felt myself starting to, like, try and protrude from my body. And it was almost like I'm trying to just get out, and I tried to push and push and push. And I think on the third push, I was able to get out of my body. Cool. So I go through, I'm laying in my bed. I get up off my bed and I go through my bedroom door and I go out to the living room, and I'm like, I gotta leave some proof that I actually did this. It feels amazing. I know that it's real, but how can I convince that part of myself that will always question it? How can I do that? And for some reason, my living room TV was on in this dream or not dream, not sure. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to turn the TV off. That's how I'm going to prove it to myself. And I was like, I don't know if I left the TV on or not, but for some reason at that time, I knew that would be all I needed. And so then after I did that, I was like, all right, because for some reason I knew that I only had a limited amount of time until I can go back into my body. So then after that, I went back in my body. I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, that was so amazing. Did I really do that? Like, it felt so real. And And, you know, and I was like, what clue did I leave for myself? I turned the TV off. I don't even know if I left it on, you know?
Thing's got a timer. It turns off by itself.
Right. I'm just like, oh, I wish that I would have wrote something down or knocked something off the shelf or something like that. But then I open my eyes and I look around my room and my bedroom door is wide open. I sleep with my bedroom door closed every single night. There is never a night that my bedroom door is open. I sleep naked. I mean, what if one of my kids come into my room? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And so, that was all the proof I needed. And I will always remember that feeling of just being so free and just free of worry and free of, you know, just tasks that just take up the day. And you know what I mean? Like, it was just a beautiful feeling. And I try to get there as often as I possibly can from that moment on. That was only like a month ago.
It's, you know, we're so brought up in a culture that teaches us to be afraid of it and to not believe in it. And I know my own, like one of my earliest experiences around these kinds of freedom of the body moments, free of the body moments was when I was at PRS. And Tamara and I got married because Manly Hall called us into his office one day, and Marie and he were standing there, and they said, "We've been looking at your charts, and we think you should be married." And we picked out the dates. And so we didn't really believe in marriage, and we were like, no, we don't want to do that. But then when, you know, Manly Hall's saying this, we kind of thought,
all right,
he knows some
maybe.
shit.
No, we were like, maybe. And Tamara was like, no, I don't know. And then they said, well, how about this? You can have the wedding at our house. And we were like, wow, okay, well, maybe. And then they said, and Manly will officiate.
Wow.
Sealed deal, right?
There it is.
Yeah. So then we took a honeymoon after that, and we just drove north. And it was funny because later when we were touring, we would constantly start our tours the same ride going up to Seattle and from LA. And here we were in Agate Beach, Oregon. And I had this weird experience where I noticed that the sand and the waves and the fire and the bonfire and my fingers all had the same pattern, that swirling swirl of kind of pattern of nature, which I later found out is called by the Chinese Li. And it's the pattern of all things, the movement of the Tao. But I'd never seen it before. And seeing this same pattern in earth and water and in my own fingers and this in the fire itself, the only way I can describe it was like everything shifted, and like this world went flat and like black and white. And I felt like I was rising through clouds in some kind of ultraviolet like light. And the feeling, what you described, Jonathan, that the freedom. Oh, wow. Like I feel like I could breathe for the first time. Just so amazing. And then it's a cliche, but I actually felt the tug that they say, you know, this is where the cord is supposed to be. I felt a tug right where this would be. And next thing I knew, bam, there I was in this little rented room that we had. And that was amazing. But I kept trying to get it, you know, again, like in meditation, like, can I visit this? Can I get off? Because some of my teachers were saying, well, yeah, but keep going. Like you should have, you know, this pulled you back, but you got to go into it, you know, and really, you know, have both sides going. But I found that even now, you know, it's difficult to get there because of how much our culture and the atmosphere of the society that we live in makes those kinds of experiences difficult. And that you have to let go. You have to have the faith and the feeling of safety to let go and to know it's going to be okay. Now, if you're raised in a mystery tradition in ancient Egypt or something, and they're teaching you about this since you're a child, and maybe you're even trained as a child on how to do some of these things, you're going to have a very different experience than people like us and where our training came from.
Nothing to let go of.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah,
You
that's
can compare that to like also like trying to learn a new language at the age of 37 or whatever, as opposed to learning 2-3 languages when you're 2 to 5 years old. You know, like there's something to the mind at that age that's so open. You don't
Yeah,
have to. You don't have
exactly.
to let go of something. You're already kind of free.
Yeah. And just I think there's repetitive quality of the way our societies work, like in the sense of, you know, you have to do this, or there's consequences. You have to do this. What? Don't do that. Don't do, you know, do. And we're in this constant state of mind of stay out of trouble, do the right thing. And that puts us in a state where it's hard to just feel that sense of, I can just let go because this is my birthright. You know, I am a
Right.
soul, and
Hmm.
there's no soulfulness in the culture. I mean, even you know, all musicians complain about music of every decade. I mean, I've experienced it myself amongst my friends. I had many friends who were like musicians in the '60s, like Art Johnson, who in the '90s were telling Tamara and I, "Oh my God, you guys missed everything. I mean, everything. The best drugs, the best music, the best
The
sex. I mean, it's
best
all
drugs.
over."
The
Yeah,
drugs were way better back then.
exactly. And so, but I do look around now and I just go, wow, man, the drugs suck, and you know, the music doesn't have the same soul in the community. I mean, just in my world, we saw the whole freaking DIY indie world disappear. I mean, our last national tour, all the all ages clubs were closing down. This would be like around 2000. And these famous clubs that had been the minor leagues for all these big bands like Nirvana were all closing in all the cities because for some reason, I think it was scripted. The city councils and the fire marshals all started invoking laws that everybody had ignored for years and let the kids have a good time. But now all of a sudden it was, hey, you don't have enough parking spots.
That's by design, if you ask
I think
me.
so too.
You
And the
know.
same around the same time, Live Nation and Ticketmaster took over.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you from what I saw, they killed live music. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
killed it because you used to be able to go to a good show for, you know, 10, $20. I mean, money is much different now than it was in the 90s, but they have made it into this thing where it's like this amusement park entertainment as opposed to a vital living culture. And all the kinds of people that used to write for magazines or publish magazines or photographers, t-shirt makers, just so many people that were part of your world and all just gone. I mean, I saw musicians like one of we were so lucky with drummers. I mean, we've just played with some amazing drummers. And one of our best drummers was a woman named Tia Sprocket, who played for Ministry and who played with Luscious Jackson and some other bands. She was an incredible musician, great drummer, but could also play guitar and sing and just about play anything. And incredible looking. I mean, she was just the ultimate rocker, you know, just really wonderful character. You can even look her up, Tia Sprocket. And um, she wound up homeless, dude. She went
Mm.
from like touring like that because there were no jobs. I mean, there was no touring. There was no place for a drummer who, you know, wasn't already in the system. And she was big, but she was female, and she was, you know, now she was a little too old maybe because, you know, her heyday was back in the 90s, and then that's all she knew. You know, she was a brilliant musician, and she wound up dying in the streets.
wow.
Fuck.
That is very unfortunate. You know, I really wanted to go back to what you were saying about the two birds on the branch in the tree. That is so synchronistic to me for some reason because so I used to my podcast studio used to be inside of a crystal shop. It was in the back of a crystal shop. And you know, in those crystal shops you get all the psychics and all the intuitives and all the card readers and you know, Reiki masters and all that fun jazz. I loved it. That's my people right there. You know, even if you're a little crazy, I love the crazy.
Yeah.
So, but there was this woman, and I had never seen her before, but I think that she was a regular. It was one of my first, probably in the first couple of weeks that I had been shooting there. And she comes up to me, and she just has these super, like, brilliantly blue popping eyes. And I thought, oh my God, your eyes are so blue. I mean, I found out later that she had contacts, but anyway, it's beside the story. But she comes up to me. She doesn't even say hi. She just looks at me, and she goes, you know, you have, like, your guides are right next to you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. And, anyway, she goes on to tell me the story about who my guides are and how they're going to present themselves to me and all this kind of stuff. And she goes, if they're ever trying to get in touch with you, you'll see a cardinal just on, any given day. That'll be like the sign. And they said, and she goes, and they also said, if you ever see a blue jay, then the sign that's like a more important sign that you can get, right? So during this time, I wasn't podcasting full time yet. I was still working for Uber Eats and delivering food and stuff like that. And so she told me that the day before. The next day, I go on a delivery. My first order, my first drop off, I walk up to this house and it has this little tiny, I don't know, probably 7-foot tall tree outside of their front door. And wouldn't you know, I went to go drop their food down at their doorstep. I look back up, and there are 2 blue jays playing right on a branch right next to each other. And I thought, what are the odds? The next day, I mean, it's crazy to see 1 blue jay, but 2 of them together right in my line of sight. I'm talking about what with my eyes. It was just the craziest sign I ever got. I went back and told her, I was like, I don't know what people say about you, but you are spot on, like with your readings and your messages that you give. And so whenever you say that message about the one bird is eating, the other one's watching, and it's like, man, I really relate to that, because we all have that time where we blue pill and, we obsess about things that don't really matter. We get involved in certain topics or certain talking points that are not really like great for our soul, so to say. And that other bird, it's just good to know that other bird's always there, always paying attention.
Exactly.
I love that.
Sounds like we're going to have to get that book, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
For
let me
sure.
recommend it to you. It's called The Secret of the Golden Flower, and you want to get the Thomas Cleary translation. And I go into depth on this. You can find on YouTube an interview I did with Jeffrey Mishlove about The Secret of the Golden Flower. So if you just look my name and Golden Flower, you'll get it. And,
Sweet.
yeah, and there's some links in there to books and things too. It's
Right.
great stuff. I really, it's been a life changer for me.
I wanted to ask you actually, real quick. We were talking about dreams and out of body experiences. Do you feel as though when we dream and we are having some wild experience or something that we just can't really describe, do you think we're actually having some sort of an out of body experience, or is it just a dream, or sometimes it's an out of body experience? Like, what do you think about that?
That is such an interesting question, and I can't say that I have a solid answer for that, because I'm also undecided about what's going on. I think that there are different kinds of experiences. I think that there are definitely on the low level, sort of what you might call the Freudian wish fulfillment dreams, or the compensation dreams, or to let out tension from things that are happening in your life. I think that those are basic symbolism, and they may call back to earlier themes in childhood or people that remind you of those situations, of those difficulties. And I think they're a separate thing.
Right.
And then there are dreams that are like, I mean, you are in a different world, and they are intensely detailed and vast experiences usually. And I think that those could very well be explorations of areas of the psyche or of the universe that our waking mind is not aware of.
Right.
And then there's also the kinds of communications like I had with my cat, but I've also had with human beings. I mean, I've had people who passed on who came to me in dreams and said things, or for instance, I had this uncle I loved very much, who was this bon vivant kind of European guy who had an amazing life. And when he passed, I dreamt about him, and he came to me and he said, well, here I am on the other side. You can have anything you want to eat, but it's not solid. It's not the same. And it was so him, and I think that was really him. Or another example, maybe an even better example, and it's not even involving a dream, but just to show you how these things can be. My father was he was a child in a war. He was a slave laborer. He was just, really messed up by the war. Came to America, worked very, very hard, and made a success of himself. And was a pure-on atheist. Just, he used to say, I don't care if the whole human race dies as long as I don't get singled out. And I could never really understand his feeling of just utter resignation, and he could enjoy little things about life, but in general, he just felt like life sucked. And he really hated that I was into music and I was into all this woo stuff, and even as a kid, and he thought I was just really ruining my life. And he would always tell me, "You're so smart. Why don't you, go to a good school and make yourself a doctor or something? I mean, you could really make something of yourself." And he did not like the term imagination, like many people of his generation. To him, the word imagination meant effeminate, crazy, weak-minded. And to me, imagination, I was with William Blake. Imagination is the greatest human power. It's how we apprehend the universe. It's how we create and change. And we always would argue about these things. And he would often say to me, when I would say something to him like, oh, I just learned something amazing about the afterlife. And he would say, I don't have that kind of imagination. Right. And well, eventually he got sick, and in the process, I proved myself to him, and he was very regretful of having been a dick most of his life. And he passed and left me with a huge mess. And so I had a perfectly symbolic, minor but painful back issue, and I went to a chiropractor, and she said, this is trauma, and you need somebody who releases trauma. And she sent me to this guy who lived in Laurel Canyon. And his specialty was trauma release. So I'm laying there on his contraption, and he's standing there. He kind of looked like Christopher Walken, actually. And he said, right away, he said, the only thing I told him was, I said, my father died. It's a big mess, and my back hurts. And he said, okay, I'm not a psychic, but your father is standing here, and he is telling me to tell you something. And I said, okay. I thought, oh, God, like really? And then he says, do you want me to tell you what he's saying? And I was like, sure. And he said, your father wants you to know that he's learning to enjoy his imagination.
Oh, that gave me chills, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
That
was
awesome.
Like instant chills, dude.
Yep.
Oh, shit. God damn it, man. The mind is so fucking interesting, like as far as you going to somebody to heal almost your mind for a physical ailment, and it's like what Dolores Cannon says. We go over these types of things all the time, how we make ourselves sick and we can also make ourselves well. And so that's just so interesting. And there's a lot of shows, these 600-pound life shows where they'll send the person to a psychiatrist, because obviously there's something going on up here that's causing what people are doing. They're eating too much or whatever it is. So it's so fascinating. I think the power of the mind is just the best. You know what I mean?
And the power of the soul too. The soul, the mind, the soul breathing through the mind and the heart and the emotions. That it adds this incredible dimension of compassion and awareness that changes life. That's the golden flower, really, is bringing that awareness into everything. And that's beautiful. It is.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think we found our meditation that we're going to be listening to here in just a little bit. Found a little golden flower meditation. We'll see where it takes us. We always like to just kind of test it with, whatever the vibe of the actual episode is. And I think that's perfect. But while y'all were talking, I was shuffling some cards, and I got one that came out, and it is the Queen of Pentacles. Now, it's not the traditional Rider-Waite Tarot deck. This is actually a deck from Five Below, but it's a funny inside thing that me and Sean have, and it's a great deck. It's become my favorite deck.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, dude.
But the Queen of Pentacles, I got a little book that I like to read because I'm still learning how to read specific cards. But it says the Queen of Pentacles, the feminine energy of nurturing and dependability, as well as a strong connection to nature, are held within the Queen of Pentacles. Queens in tarot represent feminine energy that includes receptivity, creativity, nurturing, and love connected to the element of water. This queen is deeply connected to nature and the element earth, as shown by the beautiful flowers and vines surrounding her throne. She has a healthy relationship with her body and follows her instincts when making decisions. She is grounded, dependable, responsible, and wise. The Queen of Pentacles holds her pentacle lovingly. She gazes at the pentacle as well as beyond it, toward the earth itself. Her feet are firmly planted on the ground, and she knows that her unlimited resources should be shared by everyone. If that's
This
not
is what
deep,
we're dealing with over
I'm telling
here,
you
man.
that we always get
Every
these
time.
synchronistic things that happen
That's so
every
cool.
episode, dude. I don't know what it is. And for
That's awesome.
for the longest time, what we would do is, because I never really trusted myself to like get the right card while I'm shuffling, like what is my mind doing to try and manipulate it
Yeah.
or whatever. And I wanted to just completely exclude that. And so what we would do is we would go onto the randomnumbergenerator.com or .org, whatever it is.
Right.
And we would just 1 to 78, randomize it, pick it.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
and it worked really well until we
Sure.
had this psychic on, and she was teaching us. She goes, like you really should start shuffling them yourself and not relying on that. Like that's cool. It's pretty pretty smart, I guess, to think about it if that's the problem you're having. But like, you should really become like one with the cards in a sense, and the right card will pop out at the right time. And so I've been doing that ever since, and it's been working even better than whenever we were messing with the random number generator. So
Yeah.
I love it, dude. I really do. And
That's
so
such a great practice. Because you said that, I think I'm going to tell you one more story.
yes,
go,
please.
Always.
So earlier today, I did another interview with Jeffrey Mishlove about the revival of this ancient Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. And since you're wearing this ankh, I will tell you a little bit. And so this is such an amazing thing that's happened. And for me, it started around the time I was at PRS. I had a dream in which I saw a lioness-headed goddess, and I heard the name, Sekhmet. Went to Manly Hall and said, "What is this?" And he did not know. Went into the library, started looking at books, couldn't find it anywhere. Well, at that time, it was almost impossible to find Sekhmet anywhere. Over time, unbelievably, Sekhmet became more and more popular. So at first, this was subtle. So like one day I walked into a bookstore and there was a book about Sekhmet. Wow, a book about Sekhmet. Okay. And it was a book saying, Sekhmet's come back, the divine feminine. Here's some things you need to know. Okay. And then we're on tour and we run into people. Like, for instance, one of the people that was a great mentor to us, especially to Tamara, was a poet by the name of Randy Rourke. And this guy worked with William Burroughs and with Allen Ginsberg for like years. And was an amazing guy. And he very, really an encyclopedia. And he saw in Tamara a great talent with words. And he was like, here, read Gertrude Stein and do this and do that. And when we finally find out that he's got like this big tat of Sekhmet on him. And a bunch of people that we were running into in the world of punk rock, and of course in Riot Girl, were Sekhmet people. We were shocked. We thought we were like the only ones in the world, And now Sekhmet is like everywhere. Like there's millions of hashtags on Google that are Sekhmet. There's millions of views on TikTok that are Sekhmet. You can buy Sekhmet cups and Sekhmet key holders and Sekhmet, t-shirts. And there's a whole new Sekhmet priesthood, and there's Sekhmet temple where they used to test nuclear bombs in Nevada. And as a return of the divine feminine,
Yep,
there you
go ahead.
go.
I was just trying to show pictures of it.
Yeah, please do. You can see all this stuff and the different ways she's being like, sometimes she's a babe and sometimes she's sexy and sometimes she's angry and sometimes she's destroying the planet. And you see the Egyptian ones are a little bit more simple. You have just this slender, usually bare-breasted woman with a lion's head with the sun above her head. And what she represents is her name literally means power, with the female ending for female. And she is the ultimate invincible justice goddess. And her job is to preserve the balance that makes life possible. And so the ancient Egyptians believed that when societies became evil and they lost the balance of nature and they lived by hurting and cheating and lying and exploiting, that Sekhmet punishes through pandemics, through wars, through natural disasters. And that when societies live that pay attention to the balance needed for life, that the societies flourish, and Sekhmet blesses them with wisdom and ecstasy and books and intoxicants and great music and great festivals. They used to celebrate her festival 4,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. Herodotus says that 700,000 people would attend.
Whoa.
And these huge parties that were adults only, and they were all playing these music and frame drums and simple primitive harps and flutes and voices and clapping, and they were drinking intoxicating alcohol with probably blue lotus in it, which is a hallucinogen.
Hell yeah.
And they would like party all night, and then there was like free love was going on. It was like this huge demonstration of it. And then in the morning, the priests would bring out the statue of Sekhmet, which was just sparkling in the sun, and it was all covered with gold and with textiles and jewelry, but it's actually was made of black granite with silver flecks all through it. And they would start banging these giant barrel drums and blowing these primitive trumpets to wake everybody up. And people had amazing experiences where they thought they saw the statue move, or the eyes open, or it was talking to them, or they would fall weeping, and it was getting rid of the bad of the old year and greeting the new year with this great appreciation for the beauty of life that the catharsis of the festival gave to people. And Sekhmet was forgotten. I mean, she was worshipped for over 2,000 years and then almost completely forgotten for about 2,000 years. And her statues, for instance, in the British Museum were covered with blankets in the basement and were not shown. And since then, she's just become more and more visible and more present. And one of the weirdest things is that in academia, they're discussing, like, well, what do we do about the fact that we display these statues in a secular setting in our museums, but we have people who are showing up and worshiping these statues? And the statues that have the best Sekhmet statues have taken to training the people that work there on how to deal with these people who come in bringing flowers or bringing wine, or who fall on their knees and start crying in front of the statue. And Tam and I did interviews with a lot of Sekhmet devotees, and it's amazing, like who they are and what they're doing, and the fact that they are like so many of them, first contact, like with me, came in a dream. Like they had no clue that there was anything called Sekhmet, and they suddenly had this vivid dream that gave them the name, the image, or something, and then they went looking for it. And I consider this kind of, I mean, obviously it's the return of the divine feminine in a big way, but also I think it has something to do with what I consider the vanguard of post-patriarchy. And what I mean by that, I'm not doing this in a cliched way. What I mean by patriarchy is we have a long period of history where hierarchies of men have been controlling everything, and it's a corporate structure, it's a church structure, it worked very well for a long time. It doesn't work so good now. And we're trying to grow past it. We're trying to grow beyond this you versus me kind of mentality. And so what I found amongst the people that we interviewed who are into this Sekhmet approach, they seem to be the vanguard of this. Like all of them are doing things that are like they don't even care. Like, it's to them, it's over. Like we have a new world, we do what we want, and the feminine is empowered, and we do incredible art projects, or we save children, or like one person I interviewed was, many of them were trauma survivors, by the way, like severe trauma survivors. And one of them that we interviewed was a person who, after severe trauma, was dream of Sekhmet, Sekhmet experiences, starts worshiping Sekhmet, and she evolves into a person whose job is helping prisoners in prisons deal with trauma. Something that would have terrified her when she was a kid in the midst of all her trauma.
Wow.
So seeing this motion of, like, again, we talk about, you mentioned, Sean, the beauty of the human mind, and seeing it's not just women, but predominantly women, but also men too, who are responding to this archetype of Sekhmet and who have this really liberated approach because of it. And it's so different, from this fear of, my God, that's a demon. What, you don't know what that is. I mean, it's an alien. It's something that's harmful. I mean, how can you trust this ancient Egyptian deity in any possible way? Especially a deity that can be so violent, that kills the unjust. And I think of it as, it's exciting to me that humanity is appreciating our incredible heritage, as we mentioned toward the beginning of our talk, that all of these gods, all of these traditions, all of these ladders of transcendence are available to us. I mean, for our ancestors, they didn't have access maybe but to one or two, if any, of these. These were secrets, or they were forgotten. And now they're all here. And so people can have a dream about a lioness goddess and go on Google and find Sekhmet and go, wow, that's the one for me, and then change their lives and learn from this. And it's fascinating. And to me, it's hopeful. That speaks to me. So many people complain, for instance, about witch talk and stuff, and they say, oh man, these kids, they don't know what they're doing. I think it's wonderful because, one, they're not ashamed, right? Like, I even remember in the 90s, like, you weren't too easily admitting your tarot deck. I mean, now it's not a big deal at all. People think it's cool. And I think that's wonderful. And I think it's very hopeful for the future that we can draw on this wisdom. Wouldn't it be necessary for us, when we're facing this great moment of human history where we need to kind of evolve or die almost, that all the wisdom of antiquity is brought to us now to enrich our souls?
So, Ronnie, I might trip you the fuck out with this, dude. But this is a crazy, really weird synchronistic kind of story. And so it was a few earlier on in the year, I think sometime in January or so, my wife and I split up, and we, no longer together or anything like that. And I was going through a really hard time with it because, at the time I was living in a trailer inside of a trailer park, just trying to save up as much money as I could. And so, I have two kids, one with her, and whenever we broke up, she moved to Texas, and ultimately I eventually followed, and that's why I live in Texas now. But at the time, I was so used to having, everybody around in the house, and, it was never quiet, kids running around, dogs running around, God knows what. Right. And so, after she moved out, I did a little DMT. And it was a wild experience because, it's the great teacher. And I wanted to be taught like what this lesson is. Did I make a mistake? Did I do it the right way? You question everything, especially in marriage. Right. And so I ended up, I took the DMT, or it's 4-ACO DMT. It's kind of like a variant, but I took it, and I was just sitting on my couch in my house that has now been hollowed out. She's taken all of her things, and there's no kids running around. It's just me and the dogs in there. And I felt so empty, as if I was just in a hollow tin can. And what did I do? And I can't believe that, all like it's gone this way. And it was really forcing me to go inside and really handle all that, And after a while, I got so depressed and so low. It was just the lowest part I've ever felt in my life. And so I go in my bed and I'm trying to go to sleep because I just want this feeling to be over. It is just so sad, and just I felt so pathetic, And I was just like, I was like almost hyperventilating at the thought, like, of what have I done, And I was like, dude, I can't handle this right now. And I just started just saying out loud, I need help right now. Like, somebody please come and talk to me or whatever. I'm asking for any kind of help. At this point, I was desperate. I didn't care who it was. I just wanted some kind of message, somebody to just tell me that this is all part of the plan. It's okay. You're good. I mean, it's good that you're going through that. I just wanted somebody to say something like that. And I shit you not, dude, after I kind of screamed out for help, I'm laying in my bed, and right in front of me, I see this cat person, and it's the trippiest thing. And I've never looked into cat people. I don't even particularly like cats, to be honest with you. And so, but I see this cat, and for some reason I see her, and I'm like, okay. And she's calming me down, and I feel her purring up against me. Literally, physically, I'm feeling a purring vibration up against my body. I don't know what the hell's going on. And I'm like, I'm starting to calm down, and everything's starting to be all right again. And I just remember thinking, dude, I mean, this is comforting, but why am I it's going to sound a little weird, but why am I a little turned on right now by this? It's really sketchy, And I was like, dude, this is some kind of alien hybrid cat looking thing. Why would I ever be attracted to this, And then after a while, I turn over on my side, and I can feel her purring up against my back. And I'm like, dude, I'm it's weird, but it's comforting at the same time. And so ever since then, and I don't know if I got any messages from it or anything, but I was comforted in a time that I absolutely needed and I'm looking at these pictures, and I shit you not, dude, this looks familiar. I've never seen this before. I think that, I mean, I'm not going to say it was Sekhmet, but I'm also not going to say it wasn't. I don't know, but it's pretty wild, dude, how all this just really comes together the more you look into all this. You got a little Sekhmet there, huh?
This is Bast. This is Sekhmet's sister. And what you described sounds like Bast to me.
Oh,
so
shit.
When you get a chance, Bast, one of the most wonderful goddesses, and she is an erotic goddess as well as a healer.
Let's go.
There you go, dude.
Yeah.
That's
She's
crazy,
a
because
wonderful goddess.
up until then, we had never even heard of anything like this. We were starting to cover certain alien races and different things like this, different entities, and we had no idea of there being any kind of cat beings or anything like that. So for Jonathan to have this experience out of nowhere, and in the time of need that he was in, it was just afterwards we were like, holy shit.
I think sometimes we get answers from deities that we were connected to in past lives. I think they remember us. I really do. When you get a name of a deity in a dream and you've never run into that deity before, especially at a time when it wasn't available anywhere, that's like they're remembering you. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest to you, Jonathan, that maybe that's what you had Bast remembering you. And maybe you did have a relationship in some way with Bast. Bast was worshipped for 4,000 years in Egypt, so there's plenty of time. Yeah, she's the earliest. Bast is mentioned in the Second Dynasty, and she is also depicted with a lioness head, but mostly with a cat head. And there was a whole city devoted to her called Bubastis, and the priestesses from Bubastis would go down the Nile for the big New Year's festival we discussed. It's so funny. It's like Lake Havasu.
That's where I'm at right now. That's funny.
They would flash people on the banks, right? And they would also taunt the wives right? Like joke at them and stuff. It was so funny. And so these were it was an amazing goddess in ancient Egypt, who is one of the most popular ancient Egyptian goddesses now. There's many people who are way into Bast. So
Wait, you were
maybe for you
saying
to
that
explore.
they would have this kind of stuff in Lake Havasu.
Well, I'm saying that what was going on there reminds me of Lake Havasu.
Oh,
That
okay.
is wild,
I was gonna
though,
say,
that-
yeah, I'm actually in Lake Havasu right now. My parents
God,
live
are
here.
you?
Yeah, and I was actually born here in Lake Havasu. So I was
Really?
like, what the hell? Of
Wow.
all
Well, see,
places
there
that you
go.
name.
So you live in the city of a Sekhmet festival, because the whole thing in those Bast and Sekhmet festivals was, flashing and getting drunk and
Girls
sex
Gone
and
Wild.
music and
Yep.
partying in the
That
sun,
is crazy, dude. What are the odds of that?
I
Like
know.
Jonathan was probably the only person ever born there. That's what we're thinking.
I don't know any other person that was actually born here because it's normally just
Right,
like
I know,
a.
that's so
ridiculous.
rare. Yeah, that's so
That's
cool.
so random that you brought it up, though, and that he's actually in. Like, I don't know. There's
And
just
I'm here.
synchronicity on top of synchronicity.
Oh
you know?
my God.
And we are talking about creativity before this, and Jonathan was saying, "Oh, maybe you should give me an Ankh tattoo," and I give him the tattoo, and then that kind of sparked your story with that.
Yeah.
And, oh my God!
Isn't
who
it
would've
great how
known?
that happens? I mean,
I love it.
that's to me,
That's
that's the soul, the higher soul is here with us.
Mhm.
And you see that this magic happening.
Right.
It's so beautiful.
That's great. And with the deities and things like that, what is that as far as it coming into someone's awareness? Is that something because this person or entity was worshipped for so long? It's almost just like the energy is just in the ether at all times. And
Yeah, I don't know. There's
What is
different interpretations. I'll share some of them with you, and then I'll tell you what I think. So some people in the occult world, there's a lot of nervousness currently about they're calling egregores. Collective thought forms take on a life of their own, have their own ends in mind, and don't care who they have to hurt to get there. I'm not the history of egregores is a little different actually from that. This is a more recent development of the definition, and I don't think it really meets Occam's razor. Like, I think it's needlessly complex. I think you can explain a lot about human beings without egregores. But
Really?
some people say Sekhmet's an egregore, and they say, "Oh my God, don't wake up that egregore. That's a dangerous egregore." I don't think that's the case. Some people say it's the collective unconscious. It's an archetype, right? So Sekhmet is literally the archetype of female power, the lioness-headed woman, the leader, the warrior woman. And there's the famous African queen who took on Augustus, the Roman emperor, and was one of the only people to beat him in warfare. She was a great hero. She lost her eye in battle. And I mean, one of the stories told about her is that she would feed Roman captives to her lion cubs personally, like cut them up alive and toss them to the lions.
Savagery.
Savagery, but it worked. It made the Romans terrified in battle to be captured. And so there could have been a very earlier warrior cult based on lionesses, on observation, right? But it turned into this kind of religion. And the thing about Sekhmet is that in the very earliest versions where she's sort of accepted into society as an important goddess, she's a part of a trinity. There's a mother, that's her, and she's a loving mother, but also she's a war goddess, so she defends the city and the family. She was the goddess of Memphis, which was this beautiful city with shining white walls in the Nile Delta. And her husband was Ptah, a creator god, who they say that when the waters of endless chaos finally gave up one little tiny piece of fertile land, there was Ptah standing on it. And Ptah creates people and cities and religions and everything, all to amuse Sekhmet, and they adore each other. And they have a son named Nefertum, who is the blue lotus, and who is a god of healing and intoxication. So Memphis must have been a fun place to live. I mean, look, compare that to the Catholic Trinity, right? I mean, wow. I mean, which city do you want to live in?
Exactly.
And but Heliopolis, which was nearby, became the political capital of Egypt. And there, Sekhmet and Ptah were worshipped with a son named Mahes, who was a war god who carried two scimitars. So different. Heliopolis took over everything and became the official religion, while Sekhmet becomes this kind of story that they try to rework and make fit into the patriarchy because she's too important to let go of. But they try to keep saying, well, she's really just her father's energy and that kind of thing. I think she's probably a glimpse at a pre-patriarchal, matriarchal goddess, some kind of an Amazon-like vision of a war goddess. And actually, interestingly enough, female war goddesses are very common in the ancient world, like Athena, for example, who's a better warrior than Ares. And so we have some kind of this female power floating around in cultures like Greece, where women were disempowered. There weren't female warriors in Greece while they were worshiping Athena. It's weird. It's like this disconnect. And so now, as the world is changing, and we're getting female fighter pilots, and we have a female vice president, and women are kind of rising all over the world, here we have this goddess rising, who represents this, not just this power, but power in the service of the preservation of the balance of life. That she was said to be the friend of the common folk. She hated liars. She hated cheaters. And you always hear, so often, unfortunately, you will hear a Christian, Catholic, or evangelical writers talking about, America's going to go pagan. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be there's no morals. There's no ethics. There's a lot of ethics. There's a lot of ethics in the pagan world. This goddess is literally the ethics of living a good life, where you are respectful of nature and of each other, and of the balance of it all. And so the awakening of these ideas in forms that speak to people who don't respond to the existing religions, right? They just don't talk to them, is exciting.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at, dude. I mean, whenever I first got into spirituality at all, I think that a lot of people, especially in the United States, maybe you look at Christianity, and that's really where I went, and I really enjoyed it. I went to church every Sunday for a year, maybe a little bit more,
sure.
And I really did enjoy it, but there was aspects of it that, didn't really connect with me in some ways. Yeah. And so then I started really, branching out, looking other places, and here we are.
Yeah, which is great. I find I have Christian friends, and I mean, some of my Christian friends are I always tell people, like, there is nothing better in the world than a sincere Christian, like a real Christian, like who has humility, who doesn't judge other people. I mean, they are a blessing on the planet.
Oh yeah,
wonderful people, but it's only that many of them. There's a whole bunch of crazy people who are using Christianity for ulterior motives.
Yep. Unfortunately, but hey, dude, I mean, I think that it's beautiful that all this information is really out. I'm very thankful for you and all of your life experiences and coming on and having this conversation with us. This is by far one of my favorite conversations we've ever had on this show. And you're so intuitive, and you the way you just effortlessly just give us this information, and it helps. It will help us. It's already helping us on.
Good. Anytime, Jonathan. Anytime, you guys, Sean. I mean, I'm happy to talk to you. I really like what you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I'll say just pretty much what Jonathan said. Yeah, we really appreciate you, man. And the wealth of knowledge and how well spoken you are. It's what I would like to be able to
you'll get
be able
there.
to do.
I was not anywhere like this, and I'm still not where I'll be, and you'll get there. It's a long path.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you, how did we do? You know what I mean?
Oh, you're great.
You nailed it.
Yeah, you did. I love what you all doing. I love where you're coming from, everything about it I think is great. I really do.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. Well,
keep at it.
We definitely will. This is going to be till death. We love this. But if any of the one wants to be able to get in touch with you, be able to find you or any of your information, I mean, feel free to just tell them where they can.
Okay, sure. I probably if you want to ask me questions or stuff, probably Instagram, which is at the Ronnie Pontiac, because there was already another Ronnie Pontiac. And then you can find me on YouTube, Ronnie Pontiac. I have a channel I just launched that has some content about some projects that Tamara and I are working on. Might find interesting. The stuff on the unobstructed universe would probably really be interesting to you guys because it's similar to what we're talking about.
Awesome.
And then trying to think if there's anything else. I'm sure I'm going to kick myself for not mentioning something, but that's all I can think of right now. So, but if you Google me too, like if you're interested in the music or the films or any of that stuff, just Google and you'll find a bunch of information.
Great, great. Yeah, I saw that you were also on medium.com as well.
Yeah, I do a weekly astrology report, just like what's going on in the stars, and I try to put inspiring quotes in there. And sometimes I have other content in Medium, so yeah, you can definitely follow me there also. And I'm can be found on Threads, and I can be found on Facebook, and eventually probably on TikTok. I actually have a TikTok account, but I just haven't had time to get stuff there.
It's a lot to keep up with everything, brother. I know exactly what you mean.
It's crazy. And we have a book out too. You know, books, just the process of getting the thing through the old-fashioned style of publishing, like Inner Traditions does, is a whole grueling, time-consuming, but amazing process.
Oh yeah. I mean, I will definitely be ordering that book, and I cannot wait to read it, man, because
thank you.
I mean, if
just writing a book alone just seems to me as something that would be so impossible. You know what I'm saying? So someone that's actually done it, like,
I'll tell you though, what happens, it's not, it's funny. Like the American Metaphysical Religion book started because I was in Manly Hall's vault having lunch with him. And I pointed to this big leather book and I was like, what's that? And he said, oh, that's a good one. You should pick it up. And it was called The Platonist. It was a newspaper published in the 1880s in St. Louis when it was a cow town that was filled with translations of Plato and Plotinus, just all this pagan stuff. And I could not, it just rocked my world. Because like, why during the year when the gunfight at the OK Corral happened, did somebody publish a freaking newspaper of Plato, in St. Louis? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it took me years to find out, taking notes. And even like when we were touring, Tamara and I would go to like university libraries and stuff during the day trying to find information about things we were interested in, and including that. And since then, there's been this revolution in academia. So all this information came out, just amazing. And I found out that Plato was actually a huge fad in America in those days. And people even housewives were into Plato and stuff. It's really a trip. And they used to celebrate Plato's birthday. But anyway, so this kind of material was out there all the way back then, like, so I start taking notes. I'm not writing a book, I'm just, wow, what, I just throw the notebooks somewhere. And then eventually, years later, I came back to the notebooks. We found them basically going through stuff from touring and everything. And we were like, wow, wow, Tamara, you're like reading it to each other. Wow, look at this, and it was almost like the book had half written itself. And so also I was very lucky because back then when I first started working on it in the 2010s, late 2010s, Google and Amazon would let you search any book that they had all the way. So I got to all these books, any book I could think of, all the academic books were available for me to read all the way. No, you can't do that anymore, but that was amazing because I could never have afforded all the books that I was able to consult. And so then you start taking notes from those books, right? And then that's how a book starts. And you have ideas, you talk to your friends, you talk to people who are into it, and they tell you, oh, you should do this. And then next thing you know, there's a book.
Yeah, I think that eventually, the Meta Mysteries podcast is going to just take on so much information that there's going to have to be a book written. I think that, with all the stuff that we talk about, all the really great guests and all the really great information that we come across, it's like the books, it does seem that they really would seem to kind of write themselves. And I mean, hey, whenever you get in that flow state and you're writing a book, who knows where that's even coming from anyway? You know,
it pops in your head. I'm not kidding, man. I mean, you know, those lines are given to you. In fact, one of my friends, there's an amazing human being named John Trudell, who he was one of the founders of the American Indian movement, and he was a poet, a Sioux indigenous poet, and a real activist for native rights. Really amazing human being, and so he told me that his poems all arrived to him like ropes, one sentence at a time, that were let down to him by his late wife, who had been killed by the FBI.
Oh.
And he lived in constant mourning for her, but that it kept him alive to have her dropping these ropes of lines down to him. And he said, I never know what it's going to be, you know, until it's finished. And I often think about that when I do my writing, because it's the same. I mean, it's the weirdest thing, especially when you get used to it. You know, you put your notes down there and then you sit in front of it, and then suddenly it just starts going, you know, and I never question it. I just write down what I'm hearing in my head, and it's always better. Part of that's because, you know, this was Tamara's thing in music. Like, she loved improv, and I don't mean like jamming. I mean, she wanted to make up real songs in the moment. And we could do it. We got good at it. And her lyrics were incredible when she would do that. And this is partly under the influence of the guy I mentioned before, Randy Rourke, who taught her about how Kerouac would work. And, you know, it was like, let the unconscious guide you. It's always better. The conscious mind is out here parsing everything, but the unconscious will just be a river that gives you what you need.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're ready to write a book, Sean, that river will flow.
Oh, yeah. Imagine just sitting in front of the computer or notepad and just start writing. You know what
exactly.
I mean? You can't learn to play the piano unless you're sitting in front of the piano.
Exactly.
Kind of
That's
thing,
it.
You know? So,
yeah.
Love it. I'm inspired. I'm doing it.
Cool, man.
Eventually.
Glad.
It's coming.
All right. Well, I hope to see you guys soon. I really like you, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and keep on going.
Thank you, brother.
Sure.
This was an absolute pleasure. I mean, it's going to be something that we never forget. So thank you so much,
cool.
man. It was absolutely great, and definitely we'll do it again. But look, if Ronnie Pontiac came here and he taught you anything, it's that you don't know what you don't know. So don't just get weird.
Stay weird.